You've been lied to about retirement, and the worst part, you probably believe it. Most people think continuing to save aggressively after 65 is responsible, but I'm going to show you why it's one of the most devastating mistakes you can make with your remaining years. In the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through these dangerous retirement myths that are stealing your freedom, and if you stay with me until the end, you'll discover exactly how to stop sacrificing your life on the altar of financial fear and finally live with the dignity and joy you've earned. So, before we dive in, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and tell in the comments where you're watching from, because I want to know how. Many of you are ready to break free from the prison of pointless accumulation and start living before it's too late. The brutal truth about saving after 65, why your old habits are now your worst enemy. Let me tell you something that's going to make you uncomfortable, and I make no apologies for it. After spending decades studying human behavior, markets, and the catastrophic mistakes people make with their money, I've watched thousands of retirees ruin what should have been the most liberating years of their lives. They worked 40, 50 years, survived the Great Depression, fought in wars, built businesses from nothing, weathered every economic storm imaginable, only to spend their final decades terrified of the very money they'd accumulated. It's not just sad, it's absurd. Here's what nobody wants to admit. After 65, the rules change completely. The financial strategies that made you successful in your 30 seconds and 40 seconds become liabilities in your 70s. But most people can't let go. They cling to old habits like drowning men cling to anchors, dragging themselves down while insisting they're being responsible. I saw this throughout the 1950s, the 1960s, the 1970s, and it hasn't changed. People retire with sufficient wealth, then immediately revert to Depression-era scarcity thinking, as if one wrong purchase will send them to the poorhouse. Let me ask you a painful question. Are you over 65 and still obsessed with saving more? Do you check your account balance more often than you enjoy your life? Do you deny yourself basic comforts because you're being careful? Then you don't need more money. You need a better mindset. You've confused security with hoarding and prudence with paranoia. I watched people in the early 1980s, successful people, mind you, who had accumulated more than enough to live comfortably for 20 years, yet they ate cheap food, denied themselves every pleasure, and turned their golden years into a spreadsheet exercise. They became accountants of their own misery. And when they died, their children, who never learned their discipline, spent in months what these people had denied themselves for decades. The IRS got the rest. Tell me, where's the wisdom in that? Where's the responsibility in dying with money you earned but never enjoyed? The fundamental confusion is this. People conflate two entirely different things: saving for security versus saving out of fear. By age 65, if you've done things even remotely right, the first should be complete. The second, that's just cowardice wearing a respectable mask. I've seen men who survived the Depression clutch every dollar as if the next one might not come, even when they're sitting on portfolios worth hundreds of thousands. That's not financial discipline. That's trauma masquerading as virtue. Here's the principle nobody teaches you. The ultimate goal of saving is to stop saving. You didn't accumulate wealth to guard it until death. You accumulated it to buy freedom, comfort, dignity, and yes, a little enjoyment while you can still experience it. Your money was meant to eliminate friction from your life, not create new anxieties. At 65, you should be working to reduce stress, not inventing new reasons to worry. And I already hear the chorus of objections. But Milton, what if I live to 100? What if medical bills skyrocket? What if the market crashes? What if my children need help? Here's my counter question. What if you spend the last healthy decade of your life imagining disasters that never materialize? Fear is the most expensive luxury in existence. It doesn't cost you dollars, it costs you life itself. It costs you experiences you'll never have, comfort you'll never feel, and joy you'll never know. I've lived through market crashes, currency crises, inflation spirals, and every financial catastrophe you can imagine. And you know what I learned? The people who died with regret weren't the ones who spent too much. They were the ones who saved too long. They were the ones who turned their final years into a vigil over account statements instead of a celebration of life well lived. At 65, You're not building an empire anymore. You're trying not to turn your remaining years into a balance sheet. Let me be crystal clear before you misunderstand. I'm not telling you to become reckless. Age is no excuse for stupidity. But there's a massive difference between using money wisely and hoarding it like a medieval peasant preparing for plague and famine. The longest and happiest retirements I've observed belong to people who understood a simple formula. Use money to eliminate friction. Friction in your health, friction in your comfort, friction in your daily existence. Think about it this way. You spent 40 years climbing a mountain. You reached the summit. Why on earth would you sit there guarding a bag of rocks instead of enjoying the view? The mountain doesn't care about your balance. Your children will survive without an extra $50,000. And the world certainly won't reward you for dying with the biggest bank account in the cemetery. Aggressive saving in your 20s is brilliant. In your 30s, it's sensible. In your 40s, it's strategic. In your 50s, it's necessary. After 65, you should be harvesting, not planting. No one plants seeds in late autumn except people who've forgotten how seasons work. I once asked a man who just retired whether he should keep saving 10% of his income. I asked him something simpler. Do you want to die rich or live better? He froze. 50 years of habit, and he'd never questioned it once. That's the danger. Habit without thought becomes slavery. You've earned the right to use what you built. You're not a frightened beginner anymore. You're a veteran who's fought every financial battle and won. Act like it. The arithmetic nobody wants you to understand. Why dying rich is the most expensive mistake you can make. Now let's talk about something that makes people genuinely uncomfortable. The real cost of saving too long. It's not measured in dollars. It's measured in the life you didn't live. I've watched wealthy retirees die with portfolios they never touched, pensions they never used, bank accounts they guarded like dragons, hoarding gold they'd never spent. I call it the Fort Knox retirement plan. It looks impressive until you realize the vault is full, but the owner is gone. The tragedy isn't the money left behind. The tragedy is the decades spent protecting it. Here's the mathematical reality people refuse to face. After 65, every dollar you save has diminishing returns, and every year you delay spending multiplies your opportunity cost. This isn't philosophy. This is arithmetic. $1 at age 30 gives you decades of compound interest. $1 at 70 gives you one more line on a statement you can barely read anymore. Yet people treat these late life dollars as sacred relics, more valuable than the time slipping through their fingers like water. Let me share a story that haunts me. An acquaintance of mine, brilliant man, built a successful business from nothing, retired at 67 with more than enough wealth to live comfortably. But he refused to spend on anything frivolous. His biggest luxury, a new pair of socks every December. When he died at 83, his children inherited everything. In 2 months, they spent more than he'd spent in 15 years. Cars, cruises, renovations, everything he'd denied himself, they enjoyed without guilt. Do you think he'd have approved? Probably not. But here's the point. If you don't use your money, someone else will, and they won't follow your rules. This is what old people never grasp. They guard their wealth for decades and then watch their heirs treat it like a lottery jackpot. You can call it unfair. You can call it tragic. I call it inevitable. Your children don't need a bigger inheritance. They need a parent who understood that wisdom is the only inheritance that multiplies across generations. If you sacrifice your happiness to make your children slightly wealthier, you're not being generous, you're being foolish. Now let's discuss an even more dangerous delusion. People who confuse thrift with virtue. I've met thousands of thrifty people in my life. Maybe 5 were genuinely rational. The rest were just afraid. Afraid of poverty, afraid of change, afraid their children would waste money, afraid of everything except the one thing they should fear, wasting their remaining time. They transform fear into a moral code, and society applauds them for it. Look how disciplined they are. No, look how scared they are. Saving every penny when time is scarcer than money isn't discipline, it's catastrophic misallocation of your most precious asset. Let me put this in language you can't misinterpret. If you're 65 or older, you're no longer in the accumulation phase. You're in the allocation phase. And the primary asset you're allocating isn't money, it's time. The younger you are, the more valuable money becomes. The older you are, the more valuable time becomes. This is not debatable. This is mathematics. Ask yourself a genuinely uncomfortable question. What specifically are you saving for? Most retirees can't answer. They mumble vague nonsense. Emergencies, just in case, to be safe for the future. What future? If you're 65, statistically you have perhaps 15 to 20 good years left. If you're 75, you have 10. If you're 85, you're planning in single digits. You don't need a 25-year plan. You need a rational plan. And rationality after 65 means optimizing for quality, not quantity. Here's another brutal truth. The older you get, the narrower your window of opportunity becomes. At 70, the list of things you can still enjoy starts shrinking fast. Travel becomes harder. Food isn't the same. Energy fades. Your body complains about everything. So what exactly are you saving for? You won't be climbing mountains. You won't be backpacking across continents. You won't suddenly develop a taste for adventure sports. The window is closing, and most people spend that narrowing window with their fists clenched around their wallets. The sensible approach: start converting money into comfort before comfort becomes impossible. Use it to remove pain. Use it to make life easier. Use it to buy whatever time and dignity you can while you still can. Because here's the truth people miss: the value of money depends entirely on the condition of the person holding it. $1 million in the hands of a healthy 60-year-old is freedom. $1 million in the hands of a 90-year-old is paperwork. Most people plan as if they'll always be the 60-year-old version of themselves, but biology doesn't care about your financial projections. Back in the 1990s, I told someone, the biggest risk in retirement isn't running out of money, it's running out of life before you use the money. They laughed. People always laugh at uncomfortable truths. But here's an even more unpleasant fact. The older you get, the more money you need to maintain the same level of enjoyment. Travel costs more because you need comfort. Food costs more because you need quality. Life costs more because you need support. And yet people cut expenses precisely when their quality of life demands greater investment. This isn't wisdom. This is madness pretending to be prudence. If you're 65 or older, your task is not accumulation. Your task is conscious allocation, wisely, deliberately, without fear. If you die with too much money, you have failed. You misunderstood the entire game. The goal wasn't to leave the biggest pile. The goal was to use your pile to live the best life you were capable of, with clarity, dignity, and minimal stupidity. That requires one uncomfortable shift. Stop saving by habit and start spending by reason. The final liberation. Why your most important financial skill after 65 is learning to spend wisely, not save more. Let me tell you about the most dangerous instinct that destroys retirements, the preservation instinct. It's perfectly natural. It helped our ancestors survive when winter meant starvation and predators were real threats, not metaphors. But instincts don't retire just because you do. They keep operating long after their usefulness has expired. After 65, preservation becomes a trap. You stop thinking like a human being and start thinking like a squirrel in October, hoarding nuts as if preparing for 10 more winters. Only you don't have 10 winters left, maybe not even 5. I've spent years working with some of the sharpest financial minds in the world, and here's what I learned. Most catastrophic financial decisions in old age are emotional decisions people mistake for rationality. The biggest one? I must keep building my safety net just in case. Just in case of what? Armageddon? Nuclear winter? Your 80-year-old self suddenly deciding to fund a startup? People don't ask this question because fear feels justified. But fear is a terrible accountant. It exaggerates risks and completely ignores your biggest cost, the time you're burning while you worry. Here's my favorite question to ask retirees. What specifically are you saving for? Most can't answer. They offer vague, useless responses for emergencies, just in case, to be safe. Safe from what? Your savings aren't meant to last forever. They're meant to last as long as you do. And that timeline is not infinite. If you're 65, you likely have 15 good years ahead, maybe 20 if you're fortunate. If you're 75, you have 10. If you're 85, you're working with single digits. You don't need a quarter-century plan. You need a rational plan based on reality, not fantasy. And rationality after 65 is simple. Maximize the life in your remaining years, not the years themselves. Young people try to extend their timeline. Older people should enhance their experience. That's the fundamental shift most people never make, and it costs them everything. Now let's talk about something that makes people genuinely angry when I mention it, the legacy trap. People get sentimental. They want to bless the next generation. They want to leave something behind. Let me be absolutely blunt. If you sacrifice your own happiness in your final years to make your children marginally wealthier, you are a fool. Your children don't need a bigger inheritance. They need a parent who lived wisely, because wisdom is the only inheritance that compounds across generations. I've seen children destroyed by excessive inheritances. I've never seen anyone destroyed because their 70-year-old parent took a vacation instead of adding another $50,000 to the estate. Here's the most dangerous assumption old accumulators make: more money equals more security. For young people, this is mostly true. For old people, it stops being true. Security at 70% isn't financial. It's physical, emotional, medical, social. You can have $1 million and live miserably because you refuse to spend money on comfort, care, or help. The greatest insecurity in old age doesn't come from lack of money. It comes from refusing to use it. Your money isn't meant to protect you from life. It's meant to support you while you live it. Let me share something I witnessed repeatedly throughout the 1970s and 1980s. Retirees clipping grocery coupons while sitting on investment portfolios worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. I saw 80-year-olds refusing to buy comfortable beds because their old ones still worked, even though those beds destroyed their backs every morning. I saw widows refusing taxis to save 50 cents on bus fare, then spending the rest of the day exhausted. This is the truth they won't face. Thrift is a strategy for young people. Comfort is a necessity for old people. If you're saving pennies at an age when you should be protecting your health, preserving your energy, and reducing stress, you're not being thrifty. You're being irrational. A comfortable mattress is worth infinitely more than the interest on $10,000. A reliable car is worth more than squeezing one more year from a failing one. A proper vacation is worth more than leaving an extra $5,000 in your will. After 65, thrift stops being wisdom and becomes self-sabotage. Here's the framework nobody teaches you. Retirement should be liberation, not watchmanship. You spend 40 or 50 years working, fighting, surviving recessions, terrible bosses, market crashes, and your own mistakes. And the moment you finally gain freedom, what do most people do? They chain themselves to a new responsibility, guarding the pile. This is insanity. Money at 65 is not fragile. Time at 65 is fragile. And people always protect the wrong asset. Let me break down the reality of retirement. Years that everyone ignores. Age 65, 75 represents your golden decade. You can still travel meaningfully, walk without assistance, eat normally, think clearly, and genuinely enjoy experiences. These 10 years are your most precious resource. Age 75 to 85 remains manageable, but your body starts complaining. You slow down. Your world naturally contracts. Age 85 and beyond. You're maintaining, not expanding. Your spending should focus on comfort and care, not adventure. If you treat all retirement years as financially equivalent, you've already made a catastrophic mistake. The dollars you spend between 65 and 75 yield the highest return in life satisfaction you'll ever see. The dollars you save at 85% will likely remain half unused anyway. So here's the real question you must ask yourself, and answer honestly. Do you want to die proud of how little you spent, or live proud of how wisely you used what you saved? The correct answer is obvious, but obvious isn't easy. Nothing burdens a family more than watching someone refuse to use their money when they had the chance. If you wake up tomorrow with fewer regrets, less pain, and slightly more joy because you wisely spent money today, you're doing retirement right. If you wake up proud that you didn't spend $1, you're not protecting anything, you're just postponing life. At 65 and older, your most important financial skill is spending well, not saving more. Spending to reduce stress, spending to eliminate unnecessary risk, spending to increase quality of life. Every dollar you spend wisely after 65 buys you a better existence. Every dollar you save out of fear steals from the life you have remaining. Dying rich is easy. Anybody can do it by simply refusing to live. Living well is hard. It requires courage, wisdom, and the willingness to let go of habits that no longer serve you. So choose the hard path. Choose life over legacy. Choose experience over account balance. Choose wisdom over fear. Because here's the ultimate truth I've learned after decades of studying human behavior and markets. You save when you're building and you spend when you're living. After 65, you are not building anymore. You've already built. Now it's time to inhabit what you created with grace, dignity, and yes, a little joy while you still can. The clock is ticking, not on your bank account, on your life. Use your money to buy comfort, eliminate stress, and create whatever joy remains possible. That's not irresponsibility. That's the wisest allocation decision you'll ever make. Your children will survive. The world will continue. But your opportunity to live fully, that window is closing every single day. Stop guarding the pile and start living the life you earned. That's the only choice that matters now. That's the only choice that pays dividends when time is running out. Now get out there and live. Hit that like button if this changed how you think about your retirement. Subscribe for more uncomfortable truths. And tell me in the comments what one thing you've been denying yourself that you're going to finally enjoy this week. Because life is happening right now, and it's waiting for no one.